She tried to tear him down on live TV, but his response left the nation speechless. She tried to discredit him on live television, thinking she'd cornered him. But what Darius Bell said next rewrote the rules of the game. Darius Bell wasn't new to the spotlight. As the CEO of Innovis, a black-owned tech firm that had just secured a $200 million defense contract, he knew success came with scrutiny. But when the email came in that afternoon, something felt different. It was a short, formal note from the producers of the Morning Exchange, one of the most watched talk shows in the country. They wanted Darius as a guest for a segment on diversity in business. He'd seen this routine before. Major platforms suddenly remembering black entrepreneurs existed, putting them on display for applause, only to move on when the camera stopped rolling. But Innovis wasn't just another startup. This was 2 decades of relentless work, sacrifice, and vision. Winning that government contract wasn't luck. It was earned. Still, he paused. His assistant, Tasha, noticed. "You sure you want to do this?" she asked cautiously. "You know how these shows work. They love building up a success story, but they love tearing it down even more." Darius leaned back in his chair. "I'll handle it. It's national exposure. Let's see what they throw at me." Tasha sighed, unconvinced. "Just don't let them bait you." He gave her a nod, but deep down, he knew the truth. If this was a trap, they were playing chess with the wrong opponent. The morning of Darius arrived at the KXNT studios in Los Angeles. The green room was cold, sterile. A young producer met him with a clipboard and a rehearsed smile. "Mr. Bell, thanks for being here. We'll mic you up in 5. No small talk, no warm-up, just a transaction." As he sat in the makeup chair, the assistant dabbed his face mechanically. On the wall, a screen played the live broadcast, a celebrity scandal segment, a cooking demo. Then a promo flashed across the screen. Coming up next, the black tech boom, talent or special treatment. Darius clenched his jaw. So this was their angle. But if they thought he'd be caught off guard, they were mistaken. On set, the set was carefully staged. Soft blues, warm golds, a glass coffee table between chairs, cameras hovering like silent vultures. Darius adjusted his jacket as he took his seat across from Madeline Royce, the show's seasoned anchor known for her sharp questioning. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Darius Bell," she began smoothly, "CEO of Innovis. A true American success story." He nodded politely. "Appreciate you having me." Madeline wasted no time. "Your company just landed a $200 million government contract, beating out some of the biggest names in tech." "Impressive," Darius gave a calm response. "It was a long process. We built a security encryption system that outperformed our competitors. Simple as that." She crossed her legs, flipping through cue cards. "Some have called it groundbreaking, but others have raised questions." Darius didn't flinch. "Questions?" She read from a card. "Some industry experts believe Innovis benefited from federal diversity incentives, that maybe your company didn't just win on merit, but was chosen to meet diversity quotas." There it was. The real reason he'd been invited. He paused before answering. "I've heard that argument," he said. "It's interesting. When a black entrepreneur wins, it's special treatment. But when a company owned by the same families for generations wins, nobody bats an eye." A quiet shift filled the studio. Off-camera producers exchanged glances. Madeline pressed forward. "So, are you saying race played no role in your success?" Darius gave a small chuckle. "Let me ask you this. When SpaceX won NASA contracts, was it because Elon Musk met a diversity quota? When Jeff Bezos landed government deals with Blue Origin, was it because of his background? Or do we only ask that question when the CEO looks like me?" Madeline didn't blink. "So you don't believe these diversity programs help?" "They help level the playing field," Darius replied. "But people forget, the field was never level to begin with." Then she went deeper. Madeline's smile sharpened like a blade wrapped in silk. "Let's talk about that playing field," she said, her tone turning colder. "You grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, single mother, public schools, no Ivy League, no family connections. That's inspiring. But some people wonder, how does someone with no pedigree go from struggling neighborhoods to winning multi-million-dollar contracts? Did someone pull strings? Darius didn't flinch. He tilted his head slightly. It's called work, he said. Some of us don't have generational wealth or country club networks to lean on, so we grind. We build from the ground up. Madeline nodded slowly. But surely you had help. A mentor? A special program? Something? He exhaled. Yeah, I had help. Working 3 jobs while earning my engineering degree. Sleeping in my office while building my first prototype because I couldn't afford rent. That's the kind of help I got. For a moment, she was silent. Then she played her final card. But haven't things changed? Some say Black entrepreneurs today have more opportunities than ever. Affirmative action, minority grants, government incentives. Doors are open now, aren't they? Darius leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You know what's funny? He said. When a Black business owner succeeds, people ask what helped us. But no one ever asks which old money bank funded a white-owned startup. No one asks whose uncle sat on the board, or which golf buddy invested early. He let it hang in the air. Success isn't handed out in some lottery. People like me have to be twice as good just to get a seat at the table. A heavy silence followed. Everyone watching, from the studio crew to millions at home, felt the shift. They came expecting a takedown. What they got was truth. Madeline smiled again, smooth as glass, but this time, there was steel behind it. Well, she said, her voice calm and polished, let's address something else. Perception. She turned slightly toward the cameras, as if cueing the nation to lean in. Darius, you present yourself as a self-made success. But let's talk about how your story is perceived. Some critics argue that Black entrepreneurs often receive unfair media attention, that the narrative of overcoming adversity is more marketable than the stories of white business owners who work just as hard, yet never make the headlines. Darius let out a quiet, amused chuckle. Oh, he said, so now we get too much attention? The smile on Madeline's face didn't fade, but her body language shifted, just slightly. She hadn't expected him to laugh. You're telling me, Darius continued, that in a world where over 90% of Fortune 500 CEOs are white men, where the lion's share of tech funding still flows to white-owned startups, the real issue is that people like me get too many articles written about us? Madeline tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I'm just pointing out that in today's climate, she replied carefully, some feel there's pressure to highlight diversity over pure merit. Darius exhaled, shaking his head. Ah, yes, merit. He glanced briefly at the cameras, then looked back at her. His voice stayed calm, but it carried weight. Let me ask you something, Madeline. Do you really think that if I wasn't exceptional at what I do, I'd be sitting in this chair right now? Her lips parted, but before she could speak, Darius pressed on. You think I got here because I played a diversity card? Or do you think I got here despite a system built to keep me out? That stopped everything. The air in the studio changed. The crew, the producers behind the cameras, even Madeline herself. No one moved. Silence flooded the room, louder than any argument. But Madeline wasn't done. Not yet. She had saved one last question, the kind meant to break someone on national television. She shifted in her seat casually, but Darius caught it, a crack in the mask. She glanced at her cue cards, then deliberately set them aside. What came next she wanted to deliver face to face. Darius, she said, tilting her head slightly, it's clear you're passionate about this, and I respect that. But let me ask you this. She paused. Do you think some of this outrage is exaggerated? She let the words settle in the air like smoke. After all, she said, your own success story proves the system can't be as stacked against Black entrepreneurs as some claim, right? It was a calculated blow. But Darius didn't flinch. Instead, he chuckled, softly like someone who had heard it all before. You know, he began, his voice measured and steady, it's funny how people love to use one success story as proof that a problem doesn't exist. Madeline's smile remained, but something behind her eyes flickered. Uncertainty, maybe. Darius leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on his knees. Not threatening, just grounded. Let me put it this way, he said. If one person climbs out of a burning building, do you point to them and say, see, The fire wasn't that bad? Madeline opened her mouth, hesitated, then closed it. He wasn't done. The fact that I made it, Darius said, doesn't mean the system isn't broken. It just means I fought twice as hard to break through it. Even the studio crew had stopped moving. No camera cuts, no commercial break, just truth. And it was live. Madeline adjusted slightly, grasping for control. I understand your perspective, she said smoothly, but let's look at this from another angle. Her tone shifted, more neutral now. Media damage control. She turned toward the camera. Some might argue your frustration isn't really about race, but rather about resentment. Resentment toward larger corporations. After all, you've criticized major tech companies for lacking diversity in leadership roles. Darius tilted his head. Resentment, he echoed. Number accountability. Absolutely. Madeline's expression faltered. Just a flicker. She regrouped. Then what do you say, she asked, to those who believe success today is based purely on hard work? Not race? Darius exhaled through his nose and locked eyes with her. This is the part, he said softly, where people love fairy tales. A ripple of silence rolled across the set. But let's be real, he continued, his voice clear. Black entrepreneurs are still denied business loans at twice the rate of their white counterparts. We still get less than 2% of all venture capital funding. And even when we succeed, we get asked if we really earned it. Madeline sat still, poised but not present. So let's stop pretending the system isn't rigged, Darius said. It is. And the only people who don't see it are the ones it was built for. That's silence again. But this time, it wasn't discomfort. It was awareness. And Madeline, seasoned, composed, looked suddenly uneasy. She opened her mouth to redirect, but Darius kept going, because this was the moment, the one that would echo far beyond the studio walls. He glanced at his watch, adjusted it calmly, then let the silence hang in the air just long enough for the tension to rise. Then he leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. You know what the real problem is? He asked quietly, his voice like a quiet verdict. Madeline hesitated. What? Darius didn't blink. The bar's not in the same place for everyone. She shifted. Meaning? I mean, Darius said, a mediocre white man can fail upwards in this country, but a brilliant black man has to jump through flaming hoops just to be considered. A producer off camera muttered a quiet curse. They knew this was going viral. Darius kept going. A white CEO can bankrupt a company, lay off thousands, and still land another top job. He paused. But let a black CEO have one rough quarter, and suddenly we weren't ready for leadership. Madeline started to speak, but Darius wasn't done. And the best part, he said, chuckling without humor, when we do succeed, people like you sit across from us and ask if we got here because of some special program. Silence, the kind that pins people to their seats. Madeline's jaw tightened, just slightly, but the camera caught it. Darius leaned in again, not aggressive, just anchored, just final. You wanted to talk about fairness? He said softly. He gave a bitter chuckle. Then let's start by telling the truth. And this silence, this one was different. It wasn't just quiet, it was impact. Madeline's expression shifted, not defensive now, but stunned. It wasn't just her watching Darius anymore. It was the country. And then he turned, just slightly, and looked straight into the camera. Darius sat calmly on set, eyes still locked on the camera. I know what some of you are thinking right now, he said, voice even. Some of you are nodding because you've lived this. You've seen it in your own careers, your own lives. You know what I'm talking about. His gaze didn't waver. And some of you are sitting there frowning, arms crossed, telling yourselves this isn't real, that I'm just playing the victim, that it's all in my head. He paused. Then quietly, with a truth that cut through the silence, he added, but deep down, you know I'm right. You could hear a pin drop in the studio. No one moved. No one breathed. Then a crackle of static broke the silence. All right, we need to take a quick break, came the producer's voice over the intercom. Madeline Royce forced a tight, TV-ready smile. We'll be back with more after this. The cameras cut, but it was too late. The damage, or the truth, had already been delivered. The clip that changed everything. Within the hour, clips of the interview flooded social media. By the time Darius reached his car, his phone was buzzing nonstop. Texts, missed calls, tag after tag. Twitter was on fire. Darius Bell just dismantled media bias live on national television. The way he looked into the camera and told the truth? Chills. This wasn't just powerful, it was necessary. Truth hurts, Chakajor Darius Bell was right. But not everyone saw it that way. Here we go again. Another successful guy pretending to be oppressed. Cry me a river. Race card. Victim mindset. Typical. This is why companies don't want to hire activists. The culture war had arrived. Cable news picked it up within hours. One side called him bold. The other, angry, divisive, combative. By lunchtime, the Morning Exchange released a carefully worded statement. We value open dialogue and diverse perspectives. While today's discussion became more intense than expected, we stand by our commitment to fair conversations. Darius laughed when he read it. Fair, he muttered, shaking his head. The storm builds. Tasha called him, half laughing, half panicked. Do you realize you just set the internet on fire? Darius rubbed his temples. That wasn't the plan. Well, congratulations, she said. You're officially the most talked about entrepreneur in America. But Darius knew what came next. Viral moments don't stay moments. They become battlegrounds. And the next 48 hours, they were going to be brutal. The story exploded beyond social media. National debate took over. Fox News, is Darius Bell the face of corporate entitlement? CNN, Darius Bell's viral moment, a reckoning for meritocracy? Business Insider, what this interview taught us about race, success, and the American dream. Meanwhile, Madeleine Royce shifted into damage control mode. On her show the next morning, she offered a rehearsed response. I respect Mr. Bell and his accomplishments, but I stand by my questions. As a journalist, it's my job to ask what the audience is thinking. If my questions were uncomfortable, that proves how necessary they were. Translation. She wasn't backing down. Darius watched the segment from his office, shaking his head. Tasha sat across from him, scanning a flood of new emails. You're not gonna believe this, she said, scrolling. We're getting investor inquiries. Lots of them. Darius raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. The same people who ghosted us last year? Pretty much, he smirked. Controversy sells, huh? But it wasn't all positive. Some clients pulled out. A major corporate partner announced it was reevaluating their involvement. And then came the darker side of fame. Death threats, anonymous calls, a package left outside Innovis HQ, no return address. Inside, just one sheet of paper. Enough. Tasha's voice dropped. You need security. Darius exhaled slowly. He had known this was coming. Because any time a black man speaks too boldly, too unapologetically, there is a cost. But silence was never an option. 72 hours after the interview, Darius sat in his office, overlooking the LA skyline. The whirlwind had brought both praise and punishment, opportunity and risk, applause and attack. He thought about Birmingham, about being that kid with nothing but hunger and grit, watching others walk through doors he wasn't even allowed to knock on. Now, he was at the center of a national conversation he never asked for, but couldn't walk away from. Tasha entered quietly, holding a folder. We just got an offer. From who? She placed it on his desk. A network. They want you to do a televised special, a deep dive, race, business. The system. Darius raised an eyebrow. So now they want to listen. Tasha smirked. Seems like it. She hesitated. What do you want to do? He leaned back in his chair. He could disappear. Let it blow over. Get back to work. Or he could use this moment, not for ego, not for fame, but to say what no one else would. He picked up the folder, flipped through it, set it down, then looked Tasha in the eye. Tell them I'll do it. Her eyebrows lifted. You're sure? He nodded. Yeah, but on my terms. Because if the system was going to shine a spotlight on him, then he'd decide what they saw. Darius Bell's viral moment wasn't just another internet controversy. It was a reckoning, a challenge to a system that rewards silence and punishes truth. He forced a conversation America had spent decades avoiding about race, about success, about who gets to rise without question, and who gets questioned when they rise. Some called him an activist. Some called him arrogant. Some called him right. But one thing was certain, no one could ignore him anymore. So what do you think? Does success mean playing by the rules of a broken system? Or rewriting the rules entirely? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe more stories like this need to be told, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because truth deserves a voice.